If ever you're in a position in life where you have the opportunity to completely dismantle your life and rebuild it from the ground up, do it. Whether that's leaving your job and moving abroad, or selling your house and moving to a different town and meeting new people, I would do it. If you're worried about leaving a relationship that you've been in for years but you know you're unhappy, leave the relationship. Starting over in life, if you're ever in the position to, is the biggest gift we could ever be given, because dismantling your life, clearing everything that doesn't serve you anymore or you feel like you've grown out of on your or you're unhappy with but living with every single day, clearing all of that basically gives you this path forward that's, yes, completely unknown, but in the unknown comes limitless possibilities, potential, new connections, new places, new people, new jobs, just so many more opportunities than if you were to stay where you are. And I think that the number one thing probably that you hear from anyone who's older and who maybe hasn't done that is people will always say, do it while you can and do it while you're young. And it is so true, because the older that you get and the more responsibilities or ties that you have to a certain place or person or job, the harder it is to break away from that. I think it's in a lot of ways still possible given the right kind of circumstances, but so much harder. But even in later life, just any time, if you've got the chance, then do it. People will always say to do it while you're young and that people wish they could have done things differently. And the longer that you get into life without acting on that or making that reality your own, the more I feel like resentment builds just towards life in general, the more stuck you feel, or the more burdened you feel, or just unhappy with life that you feel. And it's no good for anyone. Like, the world is such a huge place with so many people and so many pathways, but so often we stay on the same one. But staying on the same one has so many limitations ahead. And I think a lot of the time, the idea of kind of getting rid of everything that you've ever known up to that point is really, really scary. And often people do it, I think, when they've been triggered by a life circumstance that makes them kind of realise that life's too short to wait around for that. So they just do it. But it doesn't really need to get to that point. It doesn't really need to get to this life changing, life altering circumstance to put you down a new path. You can choose to do it at any time. And I guarantee that the people who have taken that chance and who have taken the leap into the unknown are so, so pleased that they did it. And just even moving to a different place, it could even be somewhere that's close to your hometown. It doesn't even necessarily have to be abroad, but somewhere that's, I don't know, a couple of hours away, but just somewhere that kind of opens your eyes to a new way of living is so, so worth it. But kind of on the conversation of like a life changing event coming in and forcing you to do it, I do think that one of the reasons why it's so common for that to happen and for that to be the catalyst is just because when you go through something that completely, I guess, almost turns your soul inside out, and you have to go so deep into recovering from it or getting back to yourself after going through it, you almost see life from the perspective of something so much deeper than the surface level that you were kind of looking at it before. So I almost think that when you have gone through that really catalytic moment, it's even harder to try and return to what you've always known, because your mind and your soul and your health overall has just gone to places that you didn't know existed before, just simply to survive. Therefore, living in a kind of like a stalemate way, or living on a surface level way, just doesn't suit you anymore. So obviously naturally then you search for more and you look for more in life, and you can expand your vision so much more, because the thing that's happened to you has changed your life anyway, so you may as well, I guess, carry on with that, and you don't become as scared. But really, like, as much as obviously that's valid and has happened to me and was kind of, I guess, maybe one of my catalytic moments, it really can be done anytime. And you'd much rather be the person that can look and review their life and distinguish what they're unhappy with or what they're bored with and change it before it gets to the point where you feel like it's too late and you feel like you're stuck in that life for the foreseeable. And just changing the scenery of your life, but scenery doesn't have to necessarily mean where you're living, because it doesn't always have to be about changing where you're living. Potentially the place that you're living in is expansive and does give you opportunities, but it could be the scenery of your life in terms of who you surround yourself with, what you believe in life, what you choose to do for work, or just simply the thoughts that you think every single day. Because rebuilding your life from the ground up a lot of the time obviously does mean changing the really big things in life that affect you day to day, but sometimes it can be the dismantling of a whole belief system or way of looking at life or faith or idea of spirituality that in itself can be so, I guess, like internally ground altering, that then in turn does shift everything else about your external reality. But giving yourself the freedom to be able to say, no, the way that I'm doing things doesn't have to be the way that I do things for the rest of my life. I give myself permission to change and adjust as I'm feeling it and as I need to. And what can be then in front of you, it's completely unknown, but like I said, the unknown is actually where you have completely unlimited freedom and options. You can choose anything. Like if you sat down with a piece of paper and wrote down exactly what you wanted your life to look like right now, but how you wanted it to look like in, a year, 5 years, 10 years, I would go as far as saying that it would be possible for you to achieve that, because it might be that you want to have a different lifestyle, or you want to get in better shape, whether that's physically or mentally. You want a new relationship, you say what you want your relationship to be like, or your friendship to be like, or what you put your time and energy into work wise. And if you sat down, I think, like, most people will sometimes think, oh no, it's not possible, so I just won't think about it and I won't do anything about it. But if you really wrote down on a piece of paper what you wanted your life to look like, I bet you would be able to take steps to get there. And it might mean a complete pivot in your career path. It might mean that you go down a completely unconventional route, but it's not impossible, and there are always options to be able to get there. And I think the first thing is almost getting so clear about what you want in your life, and getting so clear to the point of not looking at it through the lens of limitation, looking at it through the lens of possibility, because there are options for everything, or there are at least stepping stones to be able to get there. It doesn't have to be done overnight, but taking stepping stones to get there. So, if you wanted to leave your job, for example, there may be the options of not leaving it straight away, but trying to build up savings in the background, so that eventually, if you did want to leave and pivot or change, you have a safety net there, so it can cover you for a little bit of time that you're off, and then maybe you could go and study, or maybe you could set up your own thing, whether that's online or a different trade or anything like that, but you've got money aside. The stepping stone would be putting the money aside to give you that blanket when the time comes that you can leave. Or if you know that you're unhappy in your relationship and you want to leave your relationship, it could be starting those conversations or getting really honest within the relationship about, what's not working. And again, it could be about putting money aside as a safety blanket to give you that freedom on the side down the line to be able to leave and to make new choices for yourself. Or if it's to move, it could be starting to make changes. If you own your house, make changes in your house so it becomes ready to sell, or at least start looking at opportunities further afield to where you are now to see what's available, what the prices are like. If it's you want a new friend group, you could start looking at different kind of groups in your areas, or joining new things, or putting yourself out there. And of course, all of this comes with an element of bravery and faith and just feeling more comfortable in the idea of putting yourself in an unfamiliar kind of territory or just through that discomfort. But the thing is putting yourself through that initial period of discomfort, but to get yourself to where you want to be, is so worth the discomfort that you could feel later on in life when you feel like it is too late, because like I said, you have more ties to things, or things have just become not possible for you to make big changes in your life anymore. That discomfort and knowing that that is what you're going to face then for the furthermore rest of your life is way more uncomfortable. So taking the steps now protects you from that. And it is really scary, and it does require you to get so honest with yourself and so brave with yourself about what's working and what's not working. But it's just the possibilities that come from that and the happiness that comes from that. Like, I made the decision pre anything going on with my health. I made the decision when I was younger in 2018 to completely uproot my life and move to Australia. I had a sister who does live in one area of Australia. However, I chose not to live there. I lived in the city that I wanted to live in and settle myself. And I did it in the way of like, I moved over there in the February. I knew I had to come back to the UK in the July for my other sister's wedding. So I gave myself that kind of like comfort blanket of, I will stay there and I will commit to it for that 3 months. If I come back in the July and I'm not feeling it and I'm not happy and it doesn't feel like home, I give myself permission to go, I tried and it didn't work, so then I'm going to come back. And just doing it in little increments like that helps so much, because lo and behold, I went over there and I did love it. It took a while to make it feel kind of like home, but it turned out that just before I was coming back to the UK in the July, things started falling into place. Like, I managed to find somewhere that I could move into when I got back more longer term with some people that I really, really got on with. But it took me giving it that time to settle, because sometimes things don't settle straight away. And also things made to last normally don't kind of happen and settle quickly anyway. Like, it takes some building and it takes some patience and it takes some trust. But if you give yourself kind of those first steps and those kind of times of comfort blanket where you say, I'll give it till then and I'll see what happens. If something is truly meant to be, things will start to fall into place in that kind of timeline that you've given yourself to decide. And if things don't work out, you can always go back and you can always change, and you don't have to, go through with it. But I went over there and I gave it that time, and I ended up staying there. I ended up staying there for 3.5 years and met so many new people. I ended up getting sponsored in my job over there, which was a complete shock. I never would have thought that I would go over there and, start working there and get sponsored there and stay there for 2 years longer. I thought that probably a year being there would have been enough. But I didn't even want to come back at the end of the year. And that just goes to show how much things can change, and how much when you're in the moment and you're fully letting yourself enjoy it and to see it what it is and take things day by day, normally things turn out so much better than you think. And it was so scary at the start. I remember arriving in Melbourne with a suitcase and I didn't know anyone. And I got off the plane and I was like, oh my God, is this really my life now? Like, I don't know anyone. I was learning a whole new city completely by myself. But it taught me so much as a person, and it's built up my character in so many different ways, like working somewhere else and making friends somewhere else and having to put yourself out there and learning a new city, to the point where now I've come back and I now live back in the UK. I feel like had way more bravery in terms of deciding that maybe where I'm living isn't working for me and completely going to a whole new area. And once again, it's happened where I kind of had my eyes set on this area for a while, but it wasn't really working out timing wise in terms of like rental leases and everything. And then my previous rental lease came to an end, and I thought, I think now's the time where I'm going to move there and try there. And I knew I was going to love it, because I was kind of familiar with the place, but not fully. And then I've moved here and it has been the best thing that I've done. I've met new people. I'm way more active because the area, like, there's nicer places to walk. I have just met people who have really made me feel at home in a very short space of time, and it's been the best thing that I ever did. And it's been the same with jobs. I felt that something, a job that I started that I felt like I was going to be in for life, it was aligned essentially kind of to the path I wanted to go down, but for certain reasons, kind of things that you can't really predict, I started to feel not so much aligned to that certain area anymore. So I made the decision to leave. And this was a brave one because I didn't really have that much savings and I was completely taking it off a whim. But I made the decision to, and I was so glad I did because I was skint for a few months. But in that time period that I wasn't working for, I was actually then free to be able to go back and visit my sister who needed some support because she'd had an accident where she broke her arm, and I was free to do that, and that just worked out timing wise. So even though I didn't predict to, end that job and have such a big gap not employed and working, the timing still worked out because I was able to go on holiday as such, but also be able to support my sister. And it just goes to show that when you make decisions that you feel are so right for you, the path opens up and the path clears for you to be able to do different adventures or to just get where you need to be. Because I truly believe that the decision that you're making, if you've spent some time thinking about it and you feel like you're so certain that it is the right decision for you, I really believe that that's your intuition telling you. And I think that intuition is a more powerful tool than we give it credit for, because our intuition, as long as you can kind of distinguish it from fear, because normally they say, don't they, that like fear is a loud voice shouting at you, whereas your intuition is quite kind of that quieter inner knowing. That's the kind of voice I'm talking about, because if you've got that quiet voice inside of you, that knowing that you're supposed to do something else, that is your inner self talking to you. That's everything that you know about your situation as it stands, knowing that it's not the thing for you for the rest of your life. It's that telling, and you need to trust yourself more, because nobody around us has that inner knowing of us more so than us. And I think that we can fall into trying to get advice from other people, and of course talking it through with people that you trust and care about is normally a good thing, but sometimes it's just your own voice that you need to listen to. So I think that taking that inner voice and making those leaps of faith and just believing that there's more out there for you. And once you get over that fear of the unknown, or fear of anything, like the fear of change, or I guess the fear of failure probably is a big one in this kind of circumstance. Like once you get over that, knowing that nothing is irreversible, or most things aren't irreversible. Like if you make a decision and you decide it's not right for you, then you can make a decision again to get out of it. But being in a position to be able to choose to do that and choose to just have autonomy over your own life and make changes and step into a world of unknowns and unlimited possibilities is such a gift. And I just think that anyone who's now not in a position and doesn't feel like they will be in a position again to take those chances will always say, take those chances while you can, because life is too short not to. There's too much in life to see to keep your feet stuck on one pathway, especially when you know that there are other pathways out there for you.